I started to invite my friends over to my house and test out. So I'd create a whole choreography around it, 4 or 5 songs, invite my friends over with their babies, and then we would try them and test them out and have fun with them. And so that's what we did. And so then I started charging people because it was working and they were enjoying it. So we actually had a house. So we were, young marrieds, and we were lucky enough to be able to buy our first home, but it was a little bit of a stretch for us. So we had rented part of our home out to help us to meet our bills. And I thought, if I can just make enough money to cover the rent, then we can have our whole house to ourselves. So that's what I started with.
Startups with Stu is a podcast for anyone living or wanting to live the startup life, either as a founder or a team member. Your host, Stuart Draper, was a 9-time Inc. 5000 honoree before age 40. This show dives deep into the exhilarating world of entrepreneurship with guests that are seeking advice from Stu for their startup or business owners that want to share their entrepreneurial journey. Listeners always walk away with actionable ideas of what to do to take their startup to the moon. Startup life can feel like a roller coaster ride. And with Startups with Stu, you're likely to turn your roller coaster ride into a rocket ship ride. Get ready to uncover the secrets to startup success from visionary founders and savvy investors who've transformed groundbreaking ideas into thriving ventures.
This episode is brought to you today by PodUp. PodUp.com is the leading all-in-one AI-powered podcasting software. If you've ever considered having a podcast, want to get started, go to podup.com and check it out. I produce my podcast, use a variety of tools and producers that help me get everything done that I'm doing. Podallies.com is the agency I choose. If you're interested in having a podcast, you don't want to do it yourself through podup.com, I highly recommend that you go check out podallies.com and schedule a strategy call with one of their production specialists. They will be able to help you and think through everything you need to before you get started on your journey as a podcaster. Welcome back, folks. So good to be with you again today. We have with us a very special guest, Mrs. Keri-Ellen Walser, is it?
Yes, Walser.
Did I pronounce that right?
You got
Keri,
it.
thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited, Stu.
Yeah, so we first met because you are a marketing professor at what university in Canada?
Durham College in Oshawa, Ontario, Canada.
There you go, folks. So, Keri, as far as the reason to be on the show, if you're a professor, why would you be on Startups with Stu as a podcast?
Well, I'm a professor of entrepreneurship. I'm the program coordinator for entrepreneurship and small business at Durham College. And so I have been heading up this program for about 5 years at the college. And I found myself here because I was a young entrepreneur when I first graduated from my university at the age of 20-something. I started my own business and ran that business for about 15 years before then becoming a professor.
Oh, that is so awesome. Students are so lucky when they are able to learn from professors who've been there and done that and who've been entrepreneurs in the past. So tell us a little bit about that background. Tell us more about that business you ran for, did you say 15 years?
Yeah, it was about 15 years. Well, maybe a little longer than that. But yeah, I started when I was about 23. As I mentioned, I had just graduated from health promotion and dance, and I was also recently married and also had a baby. And so I was in a kind of a unique position that was not the usual path that a lot of students at my university took. And so I found myself with a degree in one hand and a 2-month-old baby in the other hand, and was trying to figure out how to reconcile those things. I loved my degree. I loved health promotion and really wanted to do my part in promoting healthy communities. But I also, from a very personal point of view, wanted to spend as much time as I could with my new baby girl and what would be my growing family.
By the way, I'm excited about that background because I think a lot of women can relate to what you just said you were aimed at and trying to accomplish as an entrepreneur. I wanted to be there for my family And I wanted to, that's that part of entrepreneurship for a lot of moms. They wish, but they don't know how. And so hopefully today we can maybe inspire some women in that regard.
That would be amazing. And that is, I spent a lot of time. I was lucky enough to have some older siblings who had some business experience as well. And I really leaned on them a lot too for some of their input, and they had families. And so, yeah, that's what I kind of hope to do. I started to invite my friends over. I started to, it started with knee bounces, to be quite honest with you. So you remember, when you were a little kid and maybe your parents or your aunt or your uncle or whatever would bounce you on their knee and do, I don't know, the Grand Old Duke of York or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I would do things like that with my baby. And of course, kids love it. I mean, it was some of my
this is the way the lady rides. This is the way the lady rides. Like that kind of knee bouncing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Right. And those are actually super good for babies. It helps to develop their vestibular system. It's fun. Obviously, it's a fun connecting activity between parent or caregiver and child. But it also does help to develop their core strength and their vestibular system. So
I'm trying to understand, how do you turn that into a business? Right? How does that go in business?
I know. Well, this is step-by-step instructions on how I did it. So that is literally what I started with. I started doing stuff like that with my daughter. And then I thought, well, I wonder how many different songs I could come up with and do various knee bounces and things with. And, so I just started experimenting. I started coming up with a bunch of different rhymes. I did a lot of research as to what the developmental milestones were at different ages, and so which movements I wanted to incorporate. So I started gathering a bunch of songs, and I was 23 and really getting sick of recycled nursery rhymes. And I'm like, I think my husband can do better. So then I enlisted him and said, hey, maybe we could write some songs together. And so that was what we did.
Okay. So you start having your husband write songs. You're going to be the face of the business. He's in the background writing the songs, but how do you make money? Were people going on Napster and downloading? I'm just kidding. I don't know time frames here, but how were you selling the music?
Yeah. Well, okay. So then what I did was, and yes, it was in the age of Napster. It was, I think, was it LimeWire? Was that the first?
Oh yeah, LimeWire.
I remember that. We're going back to LimeWire. I would actually spend hours and hours a day on those platforms trying to find songs that had the movement cues that I wanted, but also sounded good. And I was like, I'm wasting time. I feel like I'm wasting time looking for things that don't exist. And so I mentioned it to my husband, and he just kind of laughed at me at first. But then about a week later, he's like, hey, I think I have 5 songs, which was crazy. But anyway, so what I did, I started to invite my friends over to my house and test out. So I'd create a whole choreography around it, 4 or 5 songs, invite my friends over with their babies, and then we would try them and test them out and have fun with them. And so that's what we did. And so then I started charging people because it was working and they were enjoying it. So we actually had a house. So we were, young marrieds, and we were lucky enough to be able to buy our first home, but it was a little bit of a stretch for us. So we had rented part of our home out to help us to meet our bills. And I thought, if I can just make enough money to cover the rent, then we can have our whole house to ourselves. So that's what I started with, is I started with running classes and, charging for my classes, and then just trying to make up that rent money, which I was able to do fairly quickly, actually.
Okay. So you had a at-home business that you could run yourself with some music that you knew and were familiar with. And so how do you scale something like that?
Well, what happened next, so I was running those programs for about 2 years. So I started in my home, and then we expanded into a dance studio space that I just subleased from a dance studio owner, because of course most dance studios have their programs in the evening, so they've got studio space free all day long. And so I was able to capitalize on that, because my programs were during the daytime with young parents, mostly moms, sometimes dads, and sometimes grandparents or nannies as well would bring children. So it was perfect. It was a perfect win-win for me and the dance studio owner. We weren't competing with each other, but I was able to provide her a little bit of income during the day where she otherwise wouldn't have had it. And so my second year in business, I was running programs out of that studio. That year went really, really well. And then it was time for my husband and I to move because we were living in a university town fairly far away from both of our families. And by this point in time, we had a couple of children. And so we decided it was probably time for us to move closer to home and to be closer to grandparents and things. So what I found was there was a friend of mine, somebody who became a friend. She was my very first client, and quickly we became good friends. And she was running pre and postnatal fitness classes at the time. And this was actually very rare. Like back in the day, it was not very common to have pre and postnatal fitness classes. But she was one person that was running them. So she would run classes until the child turned about 6 months. And then I started at 6 months. So I was finding that she was feeding my programs. A lot of my clients were coming to me directly from her.
Nice. You had a lead source there. Cool.
Absolutely. And so that was working really nicely. And then we decided it was time to move. And so I said to her, hey, most of my people are coming from you anyway. And I don't know what I'm going to do when we move. Like we're moving about 2 hours away. And so I said, why don't I train you and we can buy all kinds of equipment for you and you can just keep running the programs here and expand your offering. So you can do pre, post, and then these up to age 5. And then you can just keep running it as your own thing. And then I'll do something else. Like I might run them in my community. So she's like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So that was my first license. So we created a licensing program. And then there was another girl in the community that wanted to run programs too. So I sold 2 licenses. So with
those licenses, you're basically licensing her the music and the program that you have, and she's paying you a percentage of her revenue. Is that right?
That's not how we did it.
Okay. How did you guys do it?
We just did it. We didn't do a percentage. I think she paid me an upfront fee for like all of the stuff and for the training. And then there was a monthly flat rate that she was paying.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to, I don't know, just because we thought it made sense at the time.
Yeah.
And we were like 24.
Sounds like it kept working out. So where does it go from there? You got your second license.
Third. Well, yeah. So there was me and then there was 2 licensees. And then it just kept expanding from there. It was all very word of mouth. So we're going back in time, right? We're going back we were just into email age. We all had email addresses and we thought that was pretty cool. And we were building our own websites using, archaic methods. So that was about the extent of it. I don't think I had a website. I don't remember if I had a website at that point in time. So all of this was done very organically. So then, it's like they tell 2 friends and then they tell 2 friends and then they had people. So pretty much, over the course of about 10 years, we grew it to about 50 licensees. And that was just all done through word of mouth. Like people heard about it and their friend was in a class and they wanted to start a class in their community. And so we made it happen. And we did do some live online training, but it was still, trying to teach people how to turn on their computer and use a webcam. But yeah, so that's what we did. We just kind of did that.
So you got to this place where you're like living the stay at home mom dream because you're able to have a passive recurring income from the licensees, 50 of them. That adds up. Even if at $100 a month, that's a significant income for a second income in a home. Right. So, and I have no idea where the pricing was at the time, but like, okay, now what? What happens from there?
Well, so in between all of that, I got pregnant several more times. So
how many kids do you have?
5.
That's awesome. You are a goer. I love it.
But I don't know. I hesitate to use the word passive income.
You were working really hard for that income, huh?
It didn't feel very passive at the time, especially because you're building the plane while you're trying to fly it at the same time. But it was very rewarding. I mean, we have so many exciting, it brings tears to my eyes when I give myself a chance to think about it. Just the exciting things that we did as we were having babies and just trying to nurture our babies and finding that in the meantime, we were nurturing ourselves. And that there really was that symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, that is super cool. I love the heart that you're showing here, Keri, because that was not easy. Those 15 years, I'm sure, had a lot of days where it was really hard, and yet when you look back, you go, but look at the lives we touched. Not just the money we made or the success we had, but the lives we touched. That's so cool.
That's what
It's a
it is.
great part of entrepreneurship.
And that is what it is. And that's, those little children that were in those classes just graduated from university. Like I know I've kept track of many of them, and
Oh, that's so cool.
it's pretty cool to see them graduating and to see them, living their lives and doing things and remembering. I mean, we always remember songs, right? And so remembering that music, it was touching lives, and it was exciting times.
Let's talk exit first. What happened that got you to the place where you said, okay, it's time to sell this thing? And then I want to jump into like you deciding to get another job and then also deciding to go back to being an entrepreneur, all that stuff. Let's go.
Well, so it got to a point where it was clear to me, and then the internet age, so YouTube starts, Facebook starts, all that kind of stuff starts coming out, and I'm starting to get more requests, and I'm feeling like I'm being crushed under all the requests, and I'm feeling very inept at that point where I knew that what we had was something really special. And by the way, back then, not all of the songs were songs that we wrote. We used other artists' songs as well. So I was also forming relationship with other artists who, some really talented artists that we appreciated them allowing us to use their music. So we had these programs, we were getting requests, and I just felt like I didn't want to make promises that I didn't feel like I could keep. And so, like I said, by that point I had 4 children. My youngest, the youngest, I guess, was turning 8 or 10 or whatever she was at that point. And, the oldest was about 10 or so by that point. And there's just a lot of demands on my time, and there's a lot of demands on me. And my youngest was starting school. So my 4th child was starting school at the time. It's important. She's no longer my youngest, but at the time she was my youngest. Yeah. And I actually came to the college. I was doing some other trainings, and I came to the college to seek if they wanted me to come and do some one-day trainings for them that was related to children's programming. And so they said, oh yeah, come on in, we'd like to meet you. So I went in, met them, and unbeknownst to me, they were actually interviewing me to be a professor. I just thought I was going in to maybe do some one-day trainings for them, and instead they offered me a position.
Like early childhood development type of a position, or on the entrepreneurship side?
It was recreation and leisure services.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I was doing recreation programs. By that point, I had a lot of connections within the recreation industry, and rec centers and community centers. So that's what they hired me for, or they offered me the position for. And I like I said, that's not what I was planning on doing. But when I looked at it and I saw that my youngest was starting school, I realized that what worked for me when they were little and all at home was maybe actually getting in the way, because it meant I was on 24/7. I was constantly thinking about my business and constantly trying to figure out what to do next and how to make sure that there was more and more demand happening. And so I thought, maybe for my children and my family, it's better for me to be able to turn it off sometimes so that I can be there for them. So coming to the college allowed me to kind of work during the day while they were in school, and then be able to come home and be more present when they were home. So I made that tough decision at that point. Well, my husband and I talked about it and talked about, what our needs were at that time, and decided that maybe it was time to kind of let somebody else run with the business who had a little bit more time and ability to focus on taking it to the next level, which I knew I didn't have that time or that ability. That was about 10 years ago now or so. And we decided to sell that brand and allow that person to continue with those programs.
Okay. So when you sold, did you sell with a representative, like a investment banker, or did you just have an attorney help you write up the documents? Like, how did you go about that? And who was was the buyer someone that was already a customer? How did that all work out, if you can share?
We just drew up a contract and gave it to them. That's what we did.
Okay.
I mean, we just kind of basically shook hands on it and said, we talked about, us and the other party talked about what our desires were and what our reasoning for making this transition was. And we had what we thought was a pretty good understanding. We didn't know the person very well. We knew them we had some like mutual connections. But we just kind of, both parties went into it as honestly as we could, and we just kind of trusted each other. So we decided on a price, made it happen. I mean, I had a few friends that were accountants and things like that kind of gave me some advice, but not really anything to fall in.
For our listeners, if I were to give recommendations here, it would be this depends on the size of your business. If you need to get an investment banker involved, no matter what size your business, I highly recommend both an accountant and an attorney representing you and helping you make sure you're doing it the right way to get the most bang for your buck, to understand the tax implications, and to think about all the things you may not have considered that they know about because they've represented a lot of different sellers of businesses. So.
Yeah. Well, and I would not recommend what I did either. I didn't get burned. Luckily for us, things worked out fine and everything was amicable. And, but yeah, no, I mean, it's certainly not what I would recommend.
Yeah.
Most people aren't that lucky.
My first couple of businesses I sold that way. And I'm very glad that when I had the largest transaction of my life, I had an investment banker there to help. VistaPoint Advisors is who I recommend if you're in the SaaS world or the software business world, the education technology world. They're very knowledgeable in that regard. So, okay, so you sell the business and get hired on as a professor and kind of transition out of entrepreneurship life for a while.
Well, I did do both for a little bit, but yes, eventually yeah.
Oh, you were doing both. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it sounds like your kids are getting older. And by the way, what are your kids' age range right now?
So the oldest is about to turn 23 and the youngest is 7.
And it sounds to me like as an entrepreneurship instructor, you're also trying to practice what you preach, and you've dove back into entrepreneurship. So tell us about what that's looking like now for you.
So yes, as you can tell by the age range, our 5th child came a little later. I had done a little bit more academic work. So I was teaching, and then I also did a master's degree in kinesiology. So still back with that love of movement. And really what happened organically as we were licensing is I started to become more aware of the need for this type of programming for children with developmental delays. I had a lot of physiotherapists come to me and ask if they could use my programs in a therapeutic setting. And so I didn't have a background in therapy. So I gave them all of my curriculum and said, yeah, give it a try and let me know how it works. And it worked well. But I decided I wanted to get a little more education myself on what was needed for therapeutic settings so that I could dive more into creating programming for that population. And so I did that. And then that's after finishing my master's degree is when baby number 5 came. So, and that's when my full-time career kind of also kicked in. So I was once again, so this kind of is bookending, that first experience I talked about where I had my first child and didn't want to put her in daycare. And then, and now I thought I was at the other end, and now I'm having my 5th child and I'm going, well, I don't want to put her in daycare either, but I didn't think that this was where I was going to be at this stage of my life. Yeah. And so that was a real weird experience to be like, wait, I've just prepared myself for this full-time career. I've been in academia now for 5 years. I'm really wanting to deep dive in academia. And now I'm finding myself right back at square one with a new baby again. So that was a real moment for me. Like, how do I do this? Like, how do I, have the integrity that I wanted to have and that I worked so hard for my other 4 now that I've got number 5. And I just kind of tiptoed in to my career because I was being offered this great position. This was when I was offered the entrepreneurship position, and COVID hit. And so we were all teaching online, and I was able
Yep.
to be home with baby number 5.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
But who knew, right? Who knew that was going to happen? So for me, that was certainly a silver lining. It allowed me to be home with her while I taught full time. And then, and now she's 7. And now babies number 1, 2, and 3 are moved away.
Yep.
Baby number 4 and 5 are at home and a lot more independent than they were. And I'm I started doing the programs again. I actually started running programs locally for my baby again, just so that she would have something. And she loved it, and she kept asking for more and listening to the old music that we had written back then. And so it was like it just restarted everything again. And so then I got inspired again to do more. And I just thought, back when I was 20, I thought what I was doing was important. But now that I'm older, I know what I was doing was important.
So what you're doing now is called MusiGo Kids.
Yeah.
Am I pronouncing that right?
That's correct.
MusiGo. Okay. And how's that going so far? How many years have you been going at it now? I know that you're kind of the bootstrapper mentality and have figured out ways to always just grow your business without a lot of investment. So tell us more about what's going on with MusiGo.
So MusiGo was actually established in 2007. So that's when we actually released our first full children's album. And so the other programs that I used to do had a different brand name, and I sold that brand. So the new programs that I'm creating now have a new name still under the MusiGo umbrella. So MusiGo really has been going since 2007. It's just that we were kind of on hiatus and we weren't really creating a lot for a while there.
Got it. Okay.
We do have a YouTube channel. So during COVID, I actually did launch a little YouTube channel to give parents and teachers something to do at school.
Nice.
So we do have a YouTube channel that we did then, but we didn't really create any products for sale at that time. So now we've got two new programs that we've developed under the MusiGo umbrella. One is called Go Learn, and the other one is called Go Bop 1. So Go Learn is a set of music and movement curriculum that you can use in the classroom, whether it's in a school classroom or whether it's a homeschool situation. It's materials music and movement that you can use while teaching math, science, English, literacy, and social development. So we've actually incorporated music and movement and worksheets to help to teach those lessons. So that's what Go Learn is. And so that's basically meant for like a preschool to maybe a grade 1 level. And I like to go into my daughter's classroom now, and I work with her classmates and with her teacher and whatever, and they just absolutely love it. And then Go Bop 1 is the postnatal stage. So we see a lot of postnatal moms with their babies. Once the baby is old enough to kind of sit up and kind of hold, well, not necessarily even sit up, but to be able to hold their own head up, is when they're ready for that one. So Go Bop 1 is a curriculum set that we ease mom back into fitness, and we help baby reach their developmental milestones early on, pre-walking.
That is so awesome. So I say awesome because what you're doing is you've found an audience that really needs help. You found a cool way to give them that help, and it's in a fun way, and it's also like science backed, right? Like you've proven there's a lot of proof and evidence around music and movement at the early stages of life for children. So good for you. That's just awesome. I think it's interesting to think about the different ways that you could monetize something like this. I start thinking of like the Zumbas of the world. Also, like when I was a kid, my mom did Joy School. I did preschool through Joy School, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure that Joy School for a while made really good money selling their program to moms to run their own preschool from home. It was like co-op preschool, right? So what's the business model for MusiGo now?
Okay, I just want to say, because I don't know, there's a little niggle inside me. We actually predate Zumba.
Yes, yes.
I started before Zumba was even a thing.
Right.
But yes, it's that kind of idea. So at this point in time, we're still doing training. So we did trainings back then. Back then, I did a lot of in-person trainings. And then, like I mentioned, we kind of dabbled with the online live trainings so that we could reach our instructors. But now we have self-guided online training. So we've got amazing training videos and materials and things, because I've been at the college now for several years, and I'm much more familiar with developing curriculum and delivering content online. Thank you, COVID, right? And so now we're able to deliver these packages so much easier. I mean, I used to pack boxes of paper curriculum and mail it,
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
it's downloads, right? So we have downloads available, materials, so it's very easy to access. As you mentioned, bootstrapping, right? Like as a 23-year-old, it's like, okay, how do I do this? What do I have? What resources do I have? How can I use my resources? And I think I still would recommend that to, a lot of new parents who maybe don't have a lot of resources. Right now, it's really expensive to get loans. It's expensive to borrow money, especially in Canada. I think our interest rates are a little bit higher here than you have in the US. But yeah, it's expensive to borrow money. And again, as a new parent, once you have that first child, you realize, oh my goodness, my time is not my own. And you really have to be able to be flexible. So the last thing you want is a huge bank loan sitting on your back while you're now realizing that maybe your child has certain needs that don't allow you to just put them down and go to sleep. And so it was important to me to create opportunities for other young families without it being a huge financial burden on the family. And the thing is that with a service like this, it doesn't have to be a financial burden. And it's a fairly low cost startup, well, very, very low cost startup. And it's also which allows you to be flexible. If I want to run 8 or 10 classes a week sometime, maybe I can. Or maybe if I'm only ready to run 1 class a week, I can do that. And it doesn't mean that, if I'm not running 25 full classes, I can still make, some good profits. So so we're still staying true to that early value that we had of making it really kind of easy to start up so that you don't have that burden on your shoulders that you're trying to catch up to what you've borrowed.
This seems to lend itself a lot to the world of social media. It also seems to kind of give a nod to the power of multi-level marketing, or like, or maybe not, but like a community of like MusiGo moms, right? Like, if it is a way to have a job where you can be there for your family and make money for your family, like I think there's so many people that would resonate with that, and with some upfront capital to go and acquire those moms that can then help you spread the word. You don't have to have a cost to acquire new customers once word of mouth really kicks in. But right now it's like, how do I go get those first 100 moms that can go tell the next 10 moms each and have some exponential growth that comes from the word of mouth hitting, that I make this much money from home doing this and you could too, kind of thing.
Well, there's still so much personality to add to it. So it's interesting because with something like a multi-level marketing product, the product is the product, whether you're buying it from Sally or whether you're buying it from Joseph, right? The product is the same. With something like this, there is so much personality that goes into it for the individual. Like the individual instructor is going to add their own personality and flavor. And yet the music becomes a bit of an anchor. So the music is the same, right? So
it becomes the product.
Yeah.
Always consistent.
Exactly. So
the way that Jan teaches Joy School is different than the way that Joanne taught Joy School. But the fact is, it was Joy School. It had a similar program throughout, and that created some level of consistency that everyone knew Joy School was a good program.
Exactly. And yet still that freedom of personality and that freedom of expression and creativity. you know, so that's what's been kind of really beautiful about it. And so now we have morphed into having all of our own music. So now all of the music is written by my husband and myself. I write the lyrics, he writes all of the music. And so how do we bring that to other parents and families? Well, we do have an ambassador program. So right now, so we actually just released Go Bop, like literally a month and a half ago. Actually, a month ago, we released the official Go Bop. We released Go Learn probably about 2.5 months ago. Okay. And so it's still very, very fresh. But we have some ambassadors in various areas. And so they are running programs themselves in their own communities and doing well. And they will be sharing with other contacts that they know. And we do have a referral program that they're able to benefit from. Okay.
Taking a quick break from the episode. Sorry to interrupt, but I have to take a second and thank the great team at Pod Allies that helps me produce this podcast. Startups with Stu is not an easy undertaking. It takes a lot of work and team power to get this thing done. So the team I use for my podcast, podallies.com, go check them out. If you are considering a podcast, if you've thought you have a dream for a show and you want to go make it happen, go to podallies.com and book a strategy call today. I promise you won't regret it. Speaking of the show or shows, let's get back to Startups with Stu in this episode. Forgive my interruption, but if you're interested, go check out podallies.com. Okay, so I'm from the ed tech world. You're an educator. It feels to me like there might be some seasonality to your business. It's like moms just sent their kids back off to school, and now they're going, what am I going to do with my time? Maybe I should start something that I can do from home because I still want to be around for my kids. Like I could see a window of time here where it's like sales could be really good for your business. I also wonder if it's like too little too late now for a marketing campaign because school's now going. And so whatever programs you offer, they kind of like, do they follow the regular school year a little bit?
That's exactly what I did is I followed because yes, I was running classes while my kids were in school and I wanted to be home with them during the summer. But you know what I did during the summer? I would take who doesn't take their kids to the park? Most people do. So I would take my kids to the park and I would bring my little boom box or my speaker and I would do music and movement in the park for free for whoever was there and wanted to join in. And that was how I met a lot of people. And it was like a little Pied Piper situation. So all summer long, I'd go to different parks and, share my message or share what I was doing. I'd also play with my kids at the park. I didn't just do music, but I would, we would play and I would do a few songs. Gather some contact information. And then by the fall, my classes were ready to roll. And these people that I had been meeting, I was able to then register them in classes.
So I found for my business being Stu Kent, it was really hard to cash flow when you made money at the beginning of semesters in January and September. And you had to find a way to pay the bills all the months in between. In your case, you can set this up like on a monthly payment plan for people, right? And so your licensees can pay monthly. If I want to start a music, so anyway, I guess where I was going with that before I move on to this next question, ADD squirrel there. For your business, like, is this something that a mom can start in October or April and it's all going to work out the same? Because there's always children that are being born. And so postnatal opportunities are always there, right? Like, is that the case? Yeah. You're not dealing as much with seasonality, right?
When you think about it, your clientele is under 5, right? So you're going to have clientele at any time of year. The reason why I had seasonality is because I didn't want to be teaching all year long, right? It's not because there weren't 4-month-olds that would be willing to come to a class. It was because I didn't want to offer classes because I wanted to be home with my children. But yeah. It's totally, there's so many different permutations. So I must say, a couple of my ambassadors, actually, my current ambassadors actually I've known them for years and they were doing my other programs as well. And they've continued to do well with those programs. And now they're bringing on these new programs. And so, just this past summer, One of them, I don't know if I think she was running a couple of registered classes, but she was doing a lot of paid visits to Montessori schools and different summer programs and things that were going on. So she was going out and attending programs and being paid to go to the program as opposed to having registered programs. So I should clarify, at this stage, back in the day, we did do a monthly fee. We're not doing that anymore. Our trainings, it's a one-time fee. You buy the training package and you go and you do what you want with it.
Okay, so you basically pay to be trained on how to run your own MusiGo. Is that what it is? Are they still going to be running like a MusiGo program that they can call,
They can call it GoBop.
MusiGo with Molly or something like that?
Well,
or
what they call it would be GoBop. So if I bought Go Learn, I would get trained on Go Learn and I would call it Go Learn. And I would just say, I'm running Go Learn classes, or you can hire me to come to your school and do some Go Learn programming. Okay. Right? Or if I'm running, so a lot of what happens right now.
Is that how it works, by the way, with like High Fitness and some of those other programs, Zumba, those programs, like you pay to be trained and then you're running the classes for free and you're not paying monthly?
No, they are paying monthly.
Okay.
Paying monthly. So I'm doing it differently because I used to have the ongoing payment. I think probably eventually when we have a whole library, I have a number of programs that I'm putting together right now. So right now we only have the 2 available. When I have a whole library of programs, I probably will have a subscription fee that if you're wanting to run multiple programs or get access to more choreography, then you can pay for a subscription and be able to have access to ongoing choreography and become an ambassador. But I'm well aware that there are some people, like there's a lot of fitness instructors who just want choreography for their classes. They just want new choreography and new music. So that's what we're providing, is new choreography and new music that you can add to what you're doing, or you can expand on what you're doing. Like that first licensee who was already running pre and postnatal fitness, and she just was able to benefit from a little more choreography and music. So we've now leveled it so that it can be as simple as, here's your music and movement package. You can use it how you want to once you've had some success with that and you want to run more and you want more choreography and more music, then we're going to be providing that and making that available to you as well.
And that's at an additional cost to get the extra? It is. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's, I think it's always good to be thinking about how you're going to continue to make money off of customers. Grocery stores work because you have to go buy new groceries every week, right?
Right.
The phone business works because you have to pay for your phone bill every month. You want to find ways to get people to have to keep coming back to you.
So
the recurring business model is a beautiful one.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about, because we're still in early stages here and I would love to pick your brain on this stuff. So I want to be really frank about, that model, that the model where people are paying a monthly residual fee. The reason why I didn't feel like I wanted to do that right away is because I felt, so when you're thinking about, say, a new parent who's just trying out something new, like it can be a lot, like to put down a couple $1,000s, and actually it's not a couple $1,000s to get our training, it's much less. But if you're putting down a few $1,000s up front, that's a lot of money for a new parent. That's a lot of diapers. That's, it's not that many diapers. It's not that many trips to Costco, right? And so to put that money down and to gamble on yourself, or feel like maybe you're gambling on yourself, can feel like a big weight. And I didn't want to put a big weight. And I know that there's going to be some people who maybe just, they get it and they feel like maybe right now isn't the right time for me to put a whole lot of, time into this because my child now has this new need that I wasn't anticipating.
Yeah.
And so I didn't like that sort of burden. So back when we did it before, it was a larger upfront cost and then it was the monthlies. And I don't want to put that burden on. And I know that there's going to be some people who take it and do really well and end up flourishing. And there's going to be other people that are like, for whatever reason, something got in the way and I just can't keep doing this. So with this new model, it allows them to take a piece and to try it out and for it to not be a huge burden. this seems like a good idea. It seems like it would be great for my family. It's not a huge burden. I'm going to try this out. And if for whatever reason it's not for me or it doesn't pan out, then I haven't gone into debt for it necessarily. But if it does, there's now an opportunity for me to get more support and more, and that's where the subscription comes in. So now I've tried this. I like it. I like the brand. I like the content. And now I can get more as I need it. And with those subscriptions, we will offer more live support, like the live online support. We'll offer more business, business support. And So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I wondered, as you were saying that you had a package that you sold and that's it. I was like, oh, maybe she's learned from previous experience running the business that like she doesn't want to have to keep creating and providing value month after month after month and the service and support that comes with that. And it's like nice to be able to say, hey, here it is. And it's yours now. And you've paid us for it and we've delivered and you've now got to go find a way to make it work for you. Like there's a lot of value in that. The struggle with it is now you have to go find another person and another person and another person. You're always having to find new because once you've given them everything they need, they have everything they need and they don't need to pay you for anything anymore. Right. So I think the question becomes like one of twofold. One is the lifestyle, if the type of lifestyle business you want to own. If it is a lifestyle business, or if you're like, no, I want to go and do something hard and big for the next 4 or 5 years that's worth a lot of money to a bigger company that wants to buy it, then you want to treat it differently. And monthly recurring revenue is always going to give you a better business value than a business that is selling a product that you have to find new people to sell to. And because you'll find that there's just a lot more ebbs and flows in your revenue with a non-recurring business model. Right.
But it's more content, right? So the content that you get in GoBop 1A, so the first unit of GoBop, you're getting one unit. And if you've done that one unit of curriculum, you then probably are going to need some more curriculum. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, because for the end user, so for our instructors that are instructing it in their community, they're going to have to get more clients if they want to just keep running that same curriculum. But if they want to keep their clients, they're going to want to come back and get some more curriculum so that they can change up their choreography for the next unit of classes or whatever that they're running.
So you can find ways to keep recurring by providing new content that if they want, they can additionally purchase.
Exactly.
There's just no commitment to make that purchase. It's something that you have to entice them into, but you have a community and an audience to go back to. And if you can prove to the buyer of your business later, I think it's always good to be thinking about that, by the way. Who's the buyer of this business later? Yes. And what will they find value in my business?
Right.
And if that value is that, hey, look, she proved that GoBop 1 was a success, and then 1B was a success, and 2 and 2A and 2B were all successes, and Go Learn's a success, and people keep coming back, and the average customer buys 5 things, and they have the financials to prove that. Like, now it doesn't matter so much that the monthly recurring isn't there because the recurring is proven and we know how much money the lifetime value of the customer is and what it costs us to acquire those customers. But Keri, I want to go back to that thought around acquiring customers and share a few thoughts that have come to my mind.
Okay.
Your story is an awesome one, and stories sell. I was a young mom. I'm a mother of 5. And I created this fun business where I could play with my kids at home, and my husband made music, and we were able to create this program where other moms were able to make money. And at a time, I had over 50 moms making money with this, and I'm doing another version of it. I'm back and better than ever with something new, and I want to inspire you and help you to make money as a work-from-home mom. Like that video that I just shared.
Yeah,
like we have a recording of that script, by the way, now.
That's perfect.
Like you can go and use that script, and for 3 cents a view on YouTube, have mom after mom watching you and subscribing to you, not because they love your music or love how you created the music, but because they love your story and they want your story to be their story. So stories sell, entrepreneurs. Remember that if you remember nothing else from today, remember that stories sell. Keri, you have a great story, and I'd just encourage you to use it. And then another thing that I mentioned was lifetime value of customers and the cost to acquire customers. Those two things are really important when you consider the value of your business. Because as an investor, if I can buy a business that pays $10 to acquire customers, and I know that they make $100 on every customer, then that's a 10 times return on my investment. And I know I got cost to run the business, but I know that every time I put $10 in, I get 100 out. That's a good business, right? So if you spend $1,000 to acquire customers, wow, you're paying a lot of money to get those customers. But if that customer pays you $1 million or even $10,000, you only paid $1,000 to get that $10,000. It works. And so if you can, as an early stage thing, start to prove, every time I spend $30 on Instagram reel ads and boosting posts on Instagram, I get 2 new customers that pay me $300 each. Then you're spending $30 to get $600 worth of return. Every investor on the planet is happy to make that investment with you. Raising money now is easy if you want to take that route. And growing your business by bootstrapping it is easy because every time you get new customers, you have money left over to buy more new customers, right? And so be thinking about what you can do to pay to acquire customers. And then don't be afraid to go make that investment, knowing it will keep giving you that type of return. Does that resonate with you? Have you tried some of those things with your social media ads and things like that?
Yeah, well, I think so. There's a question for me. So there's a lot of advice out there, or not advice, but a lot of opinions out there where people talk about, well, if you start paying for Instagram ads, they like your other organic reels don't do as well, or and so I did experiment with boosting some ads, but those were really, really early. And I actually didn't really have anything to sell. I was just like boosting posts to see what would happen. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that and the effectiveness, because there's a million people on Instagram that are trying to give you their $1 million advice. And it's hard to know, like, how much of this information is really legit and how much isn't. And it's been, I was saying, we didn't have these tools back then. And so theoretically, I know how to use them, but there's a real culture around, when you dive into Instagram or if you dive into TikTok or whatever, there's real culture there that you have to really start to learn.
No doubt.
So how do you weed out sort of the fact from the fiction, and how long do you recommend that people kind of experiment for, and what should you experiment with if you're experimenting?
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important to remember is that what works for someone on Instagram works for them because of a lot of what we call X factors. It's their personality type, it's their age, it's their looks, it's their the types of content they post and the age of the audience that cares. And like the number of X factors are so many, the number of variables where you just can't pinpoint exactly what it is are so many that whatever trainings are out there work for one, but won't work the same for all. And so as it relates to what things will work organically, one thing you'll find in common with everyone that wins and it has mega followings is that they don't all do it the same. They all have their own unique thing and that's why they stand out and do get the following that they have. And so finding ways to stand out is critical. You can reverse engineer some of the things they do and look at what works and what doesn't and go, oh, she's someone I could model myself after and do a lot of the same things they're doing. But there is no silver bullet. I think consistency is huge. And having, I could give you some great resources for like considering where, like some great folks to follow that teach this stuff. Jenna Kutcher, She is someone that has worked a lot with Russell Brunson of ClickFunnels, another great one to follow in that space. I think Dean Graziosi is another great person to follow in the world of digital marketing, and Ryan Dice is another. These are good influencers that have great trainings and teachings on how to succeed. But I'm actually not a big fan of waiting for organic growth via digital marketing or social media marketing in order to prove your business and decide to get going. I think that you're much better off to spend some money to get the eyeballs and see what works and what doesn't while you're spending money to get the eyeballs, and simultaneously be working on the organic stuff, knowing that there's no silver bullet, there's no promise of success, no timeline for success, and even after you have success, no proof that you get to keep having that success forever, because the platforms are going to keep changing organically what works to be there. So I like to always first prove that the ways I pay to play win and work, and do small money tests until I find something that hits, and I know I can get that $10 acquisition cost and the $100 lifetime value, and then do that on repeat, because now I have a way that I can always make money, and it funds testing and trying the more organic things to try out. So that's the approach I would take. I'd say, okay, let's put aside some money. I'm going to do a story time. I'm going to tell my story and see what I can do to get subscribers and followers, and customers for that matter. And getting direct customers works too. Like just going straight to the bottom of the funnel folks and finding them and selling to them will work as well. So that's where I like to go first and suggest for entrepreneurs to get started.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's something here too, that maybe we can just talk a little bit, maybe have some advice about, for you to tell my story in like a minute, less than a minute, was really impactful for me. And I think it's probably the same for most people. You're just going about living your life, right? You're doing what makes sense to you. You're dealing with things as they come. You don't really know what's interesting to other people. Like, it's my life. I don't know. This is what I did, But yeah. To hear you say it back to me in like 30 seconds, like the highlights, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. For me, it was just my life. And I don't know which details are going to resonate with people and which ones aren't. So, it's helpful, like for me to hear from you. I know with my students, when I listen to them, I'll kind of weed out the things that I think are highlights and tell them what I think their highlight reel is. What do you recommend to other entrepreneurs? How does a person go through that process to really drill down on what those highlights are? And if I'm on Instagram or TikTok, I've got 30 seconds to tell my story. What do I say?
Yep. Yeah. I think practicing telling your story is an art. It's not a science. There's no one right way to do it. But I would say that the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And the shorter and sweeter and figuring out what the big hit points are that touch people's hearts are where you're going to find the most success with it. So when I started Sukent, it was like, hey, I was an adjunct professor. I also ran a digital marketing agency. So I've been in your shoes as instructors, and I know what you need and I know what you don't have. And we've gone and created that for you. Here it is. And people were like, oh yeah, like that I can relate to you and I need what you're selling. I'm not buying it because you're telling me to buy it. I'm buying it because I relate to you. And I need what you've said you've created. And, so that's what I think will catch people's attention. And then you have to be ready to take that attention and turn it into money. And that's not always easy, right? But you have to be ready for that. And your website can do that, and your email marketing campaigns can do that.
And when you put it that way, what I'm doing and what you did with Sukent is not all that different, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm going to create a great curriculum for you. You go out and make the friends and find the people and breathe life into it. And you don't have to worry about all of this background development that's happening. Right.
Yeah.
And
it's like, oh, I have to make friends to do this. Okay, well, give me tips on how to make friends. Like, that's what's next. I like your story. How did you go make friends? Tell me that. Like, oh, through church, I met so-and-so and she helped me connect. And, like whatever those things are, those are the types of stories you can go share. And by the way, like, I love that we're continuing this conversation here, because the questions you're asking and the advice I'm giving isn't advice that just works for your business. This can work for so many others.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, it reminds me, can I tell you a really quick story? I'll just see if
yes, and then we'll wrap up.
So when I was first starting, I didn't know what the first thing, how am I going to get, it was a new community that I was living in. I just graduated and I didn't know how I was going to get my first view. It was before I was doing the park days and whatnot. I had these little paper bags that were cute with like little gift bags. And I went around to a number of stores and I made like a ballot, like, enter for a free dance class. And so I thought, in my little 23-year-old way, I thought these were really cute little ballot bags. And these stores were, charitable enough to say, sure, yeah, we'll put it on our counter and we'll see how many ballots. And so I was all excited. I think I had like 9 stores and they all agreed to let me do this. And, so I got all excited and whatever it was, a week later, 2 weeks later, I went back to collect what I thought was going to be thousands of ballots of all these people that would have entered my contest. And there was 2 ballots.
Okay.
And 2 people who had filled in my form. And one of those people ended up being she was my first customer. She was my first licensee, and she was probably responsible for bringing about 25 other licensees on 10 years later. So I think my story there was, I could have thrown in the towel at that point and went, 2 kids are not going to, like, I can give away 2 free classes, that this is not going to fill my business. Yeah. But I just treated those 2 ballots like gold. The other one, I don't know if they even returned my call, but the one that I chose as the winner really was actually the winner that ended up being responsible. And I'm still friends with her to this day. We have done so many business endeavors together, and that one ballot, even though I only got 1 when I was hoping for 1,000, ended up really paying off big time for me.
Oh, I love that story for so many reasons. I think one, it's just like, hey, go get started and try. And if you only get 2 respondents, like, go make the most of that you can out of those 2 respondents. And then getting that first customer is just such a big, important step as an entrepreneur. Go get them, find them, and treat them like gold and make their world amazing so that they want to go tell everyone in the world about you. I love it.
Which she has
well,
done, for 25 years. She's been telling the world.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So hopefully maybe that's a cool part of like your YouTube story that you want to create in the storytelling is like, I'm Keri and I'm so-and-so and here's our story. Like that's really cool. But anyways, you'll have to tell me more about how that goes, telling your story. And I'd be happy to give advice and feedback on the first version of your story. But thank you. We've got to wrap. It's been awesome having you on the show. I love the perspective of having a bootstrap entrepreneur that's a mom as well and wants to put her family first and run a business that supports that family so well. So, Keri, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your expertise. And I just have such admiration for what you've done in your companies. And I mean, as a professor who has used your materials, I was just immediately impressed by the quality of that. And I just appreciate your time.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Take care.
Bye.
Hey, founders, entrepreneurs, investors, and other listeners of Startups with Stu. Thank you for listening to this episode today. As I mentioned at the beginning, as I mentioned in the middle, I want to take a second again at the end and say, if you haven't yet and you're considering a podcast, go check out podallies.com. They sure help me a lot with the show. And I'm so grateful for all that they do to help me accomplish Startups with Stu and get it out to the world so we can help more founders and take your startup to the moon. Go check out podallies.com and podup.com if you're interested in podcasting at any level.
Thanks for joining me on Startups with Stu. We have big goals to help millions of entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed this show, please take a minute to share it with someone else that needs to hear it, or leave a review. Remember, success is within reach for those who dare to dream big and take action. Until next time, keep pushing forward on your entrepreneurial journey.